Today I'm here with Reverend Brad Laurvick. Brad's not with me right now, but we're having a conversation via cyberspace. Brad is the associate pastor at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Highland Ranch, Colorado, and the church serves the people of the South Metro Denver area. Hey Brad, how are you doing?
Very well today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for agreeing to join me over the internet for this conversation about the church and about the work that is happening as we move toward General Conference.
I very much appreciate the invitation. It's a neat experience to get to share with you.
Great. Many people say that young people don't have an issue with race and racism, that they're past all of that. What are your thoughts about it?
I think, in general, when it comes to young people, I don't think it's that we don't have an issue with it. I think it's that our issues are changing just as generations continue to change. The other thing that becomes important to me is to realize that we are still, all of us, no matter what our age, a part of institutions and systems that are still contain very institutionally racist structures, participation levels, different factors that really create structures and institutions that if we're a part of and we don't begin to name and work towards changing, we're very much implicit in. So I think we're still actively a part of things that contain issues that need to be resolved and changed. When we start to look at structures and systems around us, I noticed that many of our congregations in the area where I serve reflect the immediate community around us. But because of sort of the historical nature of the way our communities have been put together, my congregation reflects the immediate community around us, but that's not a very diverse community we reflect then. And so I see throughout my area, throughout the population of Denver, congregations that tend to look very much alike internally. And they do reflect sometimes the area around them, but how are we working to bridge gaps and to build relationships and to extend connection? I mean, we're a connectional system as the United Methodist Church. And I think that invites us to reach out and connect to places that may not always be exactly like where we're from in racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, I mean, a lot of different ways, even ideological. We find folks in groupings. And when we place communities of faith in the middle of a community, how do we expand the contact beyond what we find just in that one place? I also see institutional racism and just issues of challenge when it comes to things like the way leadership reflects the population it serves. I see differences there. And sometimes it's this cycle that sort of feeds itself. Our leadership doesn't reflect, all that's available to us as far as the people we serve in a community. So then our community that we participate in begins to reflect the leadership in a way because the leadership is leading a certain way and it draws in certain people who are a part of things. And I think things begin to perpetuate themselves in lots of different ways. And so I think it's a time for us to stop and say, who's not at the table? Who are we not reaching out to? How are we, we say we want to create space for people. And that's an important thing to do. I wonder what the difference is between creating space and openly reaching out to work with people where they are as well. Because sometimes it seems to me to create space says, here we are, and here's how we do things. And if you'd like to come be a part of that, you are more than welcome to be here. And I don't know if that's the call. I don't know if that invites transformation on both parts, for us as well as the people we extend invitation to.
The question of a lack of relevance in the church is the main reason given for the proposals for change that are coming before the General Conference. How do you see this conversation about the lack of relevance in the church, and what do you think it'll take for the church to really be an agent of transformation?
I do feel there is certainly sometimes a gap between where the institution of the church is and where we find people and their needs. I have a friend and colleague who a while back used the term that I borrowed and have kept using, that she believes she is in a ministry of translation. And for her, that's saying, I have this thing that I love, my relationship with Christ, the church that I'm a part of. These things are beautiful things, and it's my job to help translate them to other people. When I think of the idea of the church being more relevant, I think it's important to acknowledge that I believe that the core values of who we are as Christian people and as United Methodists are beautiful and wonderful things. I think the teachings of Christ are timeless. I think the insights of John Wesley are highly applicable to life. I think the key piece is how do we help those who aren't used to those ideas hear them in ways that apply to them? I'm not saying we need to change them. I'm not saying we need to walk away from this part or this part and let's just try to serve up what will make people happy. I'm speaking about honestly working to translate and say, do you see this? This is something I've known. How does it relate, and how do we begin to connect where you are with this? So I think it is still about staying very true to our values. I often hear people talk about the idea of, well, trying to be more relevant, we'll sacrifice things. We'll sacrifice our values or our identity. It's not about walking away from those things. I think it's about holding them close enough to know we can trust that they can be heard in new ways and still carry their meaning. So that for me is about our connection and relationship with people. It's an interesting thing to talk about the church needing to be more relevant and using that as a motivation for institutional and structural change, because the majority of people I engage don't find any relevance to institutions and structures. They do with mission, they do with vision and ideology, but not with our structures and our institutions. They don't relate to those things at all. I'm very aware that many of the people I serve are very post-denominational people. When I grew up, my family, when we would move to a new place, we'd open the yellow pages, which gives you a sense of timeline, and we would look at all the Methodist churches, and we'd start visiting from the closest to the house, slowly moving away till we found the one we liked. That's not how the people I serve find a congregation anymore. They don't look for just a United Methodist church. They're looking for a specific feel. They're looking for a community to be a part of. They're looking for opportunities to serve. These are things that make us relevant to them. Not the idea of how many general agencies we have, or not the idea of, oh, we have this many publications, or we have this kind of ordination structure currently. Those things aren't relevant to folks. But when we say, come join us, and in worship every Sunday night, we make sack lunches to feed the homeless in downtown Denver, people find that relevant. So I understand we need structure. I understand we need to make sure we have things in place to facilitate the work of the church. But I don't want us to get caught in church work while we do that. I think our structures need to facilitate the opportunities to invite and open those doors for folks.
What are your hopes and dreams, and what do you hear other young people saying are their hopes and dreams as for the church as we move toward General Conference?
I find that to be a wonderful question. I think I would start with other young people first. When I talk with other young people, I don't hear a lot of hopes and dreams for the church. Now, don't get me wrong here. It's not that they don't have hopes and dreams, but I don't see those as hopes and dreams that are about or for an institution. When I chat with other young people, I hear hopes and dreams for their own lives and finding meaning and making a difference. I hear hopes and dreams of having an impact and being a part of a community that's meaningful. I hear hopes and dreams of making a difference in the world by serving other people. I hear hopes and dreams of making an impact on this, world we're a part of. Those are the hopes and dreams I tend to hear. Not my hope for the church is this. And so I would say my hope for the church is that we can continue in such a way that we become active in making their hopes and dreams for the world a reality. I mean, the invitation to help them transform the world is something that we are invited into. And so my hope for the church is that we can meet them where they are in their hopes and dreams and make them realize the church is there to support that kind of peace. Often we look at making disciples to transform the world. I think we find folks in a place where they want to transform the world, and in the act of transformation, they can become disciples. I think those two words need to be fluid in the way they relate to each other. They're both important, discipleship and transformation of the world. But a lot of the young people I engage with are out there already wanting to serve and make a difference. They're working to transform the world. I want to help them realize the drive and grace within them that's leading them to that.
So you're a delegate to General Conference and the head of your delegation. What do you think it's going to take for us to get to a place where we're meeting those hopes and dreams for folks for young people in particularly, to really live their passion in the world?
I think it starts at a place of conversation. One thing that I think is missing in so many places and levels of not only the church but of society is the ability to engage in meaningful and constructive conversation. John Wesley would call this holy conferencing. The hard part is to move it from a buzzword. We all want to say we're holy conferencing together. to moving to a place of actually listening, of coming in with opinions and ideas, but not coming in entrenched, not coming in with an us versus them. For me, it's about meeting and trying to keep in mind what's most important in this process. Now, it's hard to put a single name on what that is, but I also think that's part of the invitation, is to ask what is important to these different people and where they are. For me, my drive is to help people find meaning in their everyday lives. Now, personally, I found that meaning in Jesus, in the work of the church, in the world. That's where I find meaning. And I think people can find those meanings if they start to look and realize they're already a part of so many of these things. Now, how we do that institutionally is an interesting question. There's a lot of, so many proposals, and I don't want us to get into the idea that if we just make structural changes, that will make us relevant. We can change our structure as many times as we want to, but if we don't get to know people's stories, if we don't get to know the individuals and people around us, and I mean immediately around us, how many of our churches are serving people who live elsewhere and come in to be a part of a community and don't even serve the people that are right next door? These are places that we see big difference in here. And at least in the Western US, I recognize we have such a changing population. We need to know people's stories where they are. And that means speaking their language. That means facilitating services and opportunities that meet their schedules around work and family. It means providing, these are things that we need to get structure out of the way to let us do those things. And sometimes if we focus too much on how we change the structure, it becomes an end in itself, thinking that the structure can do that for us when it's really about the relationships.